This is your boy Hakeem Green, sitting here with my man, my partner,
Ron Lawrence.
And together we are OSNSR, the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really like the jump off for us, and let me just, before we get into it, I'm going to interview you first.
Right. Okay.
And this is kind of like a special deal for me, because I've known you for so long. I met you way back in the day as half of Two Kings in a Cypher.
Yeah, he was actually dancing in my video.
Yeah, moving on them.
Had a little high top fade.
You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Nice little GQ outfit.
Yeah, I was doing
What you doing? Like what dance was you doing?
It was the Bart Simpson.
The Bart Simpson, yeah.
Yeah, nah. So, just going from back, from those times, like, who would imagine that we would both turn out to be the men we are, the folks that, that created some of the biggest records, the industry has seen, more so you than me, but watching your career bloom and blossom as first an MC and as a producer, a businessman. This is nothing short of tremendous, man. It's been a pleasure and honor knowing you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Respect.
And it's just amazing how we came together. Because I remember first meeting you. You was almost kind of like late. You was quiet to yourself. You didn't really say much. But I remember you danced. We had a little dance scene, and we had a little party dance scene. And D-Dot was kind of like walking through the crowd.
Yeah.
And as you watch the video, you can actually see you dancing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I remember that. But I remember you didn't really say much. So I didn't really get to know you at that point.
I was still trying to get my feet wet in the music game,
Right. But it was your boy Barry. Barry, who was actually the producer for the video.
Yeah.
Or was he the director?
No, he was the producer. His
wife was the
Dorinda.
director. Dorinda was the director. Right.
Big shout out to them.
And I ran into Barry in L.A. And he was like happy. He had this big smile on his face. He was cheesing. And I was like, Barry, like, what's up, man? He was like, yo, I got this hit record out. And I said, so what are you talking about? He said, yo, you ain't heard the joint? Madism. Yo, it's all over the radio. Hot 97, this and that. My man Hakeem, Channel Live. And he was telling me all about it. He was excited.
Yeah.
Right? But I couldn't put the face together with the name.
Right.
And when I saw you, I was like, yo, my man had the orange, the dreads and whatnot.
Yeah,
he was just killing it.
The orange, right?
Yeah, like a bright like a sunshine and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
but listen.
Yeah.
I'm interviewing you right now. So I want to kind of go all the way back because we talk about hip hop, the culture.
Right.
You're like a very important part of the culture. A lot of folks don't know the projects that you've been involved in, the records you've been involved in, prior to Two Kings in a Cypher, prior to hip hop being this big commercial phenomenon. So I want to kind of take it back to the beginning, where you're from and how you grew up.
Yeah, well, I grew up in East Elmhurst, Queens. I had an older brother that was a DJ, so I saw a lot growing up as a kid, and early on I got into hip hop. So I grew into this. I was in hip hop ever since I can remember. You know what I'm saying? So you're talking like 78, 79 is when I really started to get my feet wet. And I wanted to DJ. You know what I'm saying? Because I saw my brother doing it. And I wanted to follow his footsteps. And I just saw, how you could just see, you can envision down the line what's about to happen. I just didn't know where it was going to go. But I loved it so much that, like, this is what I want to do every single day. Right? And there was no money involved, but we was just doing it just because there was a lot of women around. So it was either one thing, either you playing basketball or you was rapping. I chose the rapping route so I could get the girls, Yeah. So that's what we did. And we formed the groups in the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? I got down with Kid from Kid and Play. Wow. We had the Turnout Brothers, and then Herbie had his group, Super Lovers. So we were rival groups. We would do shows together, sometimes battle one another, whatnot. And that's how it started, man. We just
this is
just
like grade school.
Well,
8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade.
Yeah, that's when I got into it, like junior high school, man.
Yeah, because when you say 78, 79, like
that's just junior high school. Yeah,
junior high school,
right?
And we didn't call hip hop.
Nah, what we called it? We called it back for us in Queens. I mean, it was like jamming. Yo, where's the jam at? Yo, where they jamming at? You know what I'm saying? It was like Yo, you know, in the park, go see the park MC. Yo, they jamming at the parks at night. That's what we called it. But everything back then was disco this and disco that. So if we had to coin a phrase before hip hop, we would put disco in front of it. I don't know why. I guess that was the thing that was popping back then, right. Even though we was doing street shit. So if you had, you know, we was going to a club, it was the disco fever. You know, if we was rhyming to a track, we'd say the disco beat.
Gotcha.
You know,
gotcha.
Or we had the disco breaks, or we had, and it was disco D, or you know what I'm saying?
Right. So, you know, when you take it back to 78, 79, you're talking about the culture, you know, again, the culture is so important, right? The fabric of the culture, right? Fabric, you know, fashion.
Right.
You know, you was big with the fashion.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Keeping up with the latest styles.
Yeah. That
the culture was into. You talk about that. Like,
yeah, well, that was the thing. For me, growing up, you couldn't come out the house without looking the part. You know, we didn't call it hip hop, but we just knew it was hip hop. We just didn't have a name for it. So we came out, you had to look the part. Your sneakers had to look fresh. You had to have the right hairstyle, whether if it was a Caesar with a part, Caesar with the waves, you know, the right hat. Kango, if it was like the fireman joint or the cap. You had to have the mock neck. You had to have the sneakers to match, or the right jeans.
What was the sneakers? What was the flavor of the month for you back then?
Well, I mean, I started off with Pro Keds, eventually moving on to Pumas. Pumas, that was the thing. You know what I'm saying? Pumas, and then moved on to Adidas. But Pumas, that was like the number one. And then Adidas. But then you had the shoes. You had the British Walkers and the Playboys. Right, so you kind of went in between those.
Yeah.
But it was cool to rock those shoes because they were like, they had a street element to them. They weren't hard bottom shoes. Right. They had like the soft, and they had like the soft bottoms, but they were cool. It's like the Clarks.
Yeah.
Right. And then some of the flavors of the British Walkers, they were two-tone. So you're able to, like, if you had on like a certain color jeans or a certain color pair, you know, like a shirt or something, you can kind of match it up with the shoe.
Yeah, shark skins with the two-tone shark skins.
Exactly.
With the
yeah. We call them gabardines, right? Or AJs.
AJ Lesters.
AJ Lesters, right. Yeah. So slacks was cool back then.
Yeah.
And then the jeans kind of took it over. Lees.
You had the permanent crease in your joint?
Had the permanent creases. Stitchman. Yep. Yeah. You had to have those, and then you had to have the starches on top of the creases, you know, to make it look shine. You had a little shine on the joint. That's when you knew it was dirty. If it was shine too much, because the
dirt got caked in.
Exactly. That's how you knew niggas was
starchy. You washing your jeans.
That's how they wasn't washing them joints. Right. So yeah, man. But you already know the fashion, man.
Yeah.
That to me, that was one of the main elements. And even dudes that wasn't really into the music, they dressed the part. They looked hip hop. You know, your dudes that that was playing basketball, they had the fly gear. They wasn't necessarily rapping or DJing, but they just loved the culture.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So and to me, I just felt that, like, if you was gonna have four elements, where's fashion at?
Yeah.
Why wasn't that part of it?
Yeah. Definitely. We know it's definitely a part of it, like how you look, everything from the bubble letters, sweatshirts, you know, to the Zodiac joints. You know, you have couples who had the same joint on, and you know, like all of that was how you look, you know, how you kind of presented your thing, kind of determined whether you was down by law, whether you was a part of the in crowd,
right?
You know, and I think it's important that we talk about these topics, especially as it pertains to you growing up in Queens, you know, because when we say the culture, we get so caught up into the rap part of it that we lose sight of all the elements, like you said. And you know, when you look at your later history, which we'll get to, you know, just where you're coming from and the authenticity of your style, not just musically, but everything that you do. You know, when we talk about these early rap crews, you know, that you were a part of. You was down with Kid before there was a Kid in play. You know, Herbie Lovebug, who's, you know, arguably one of the most influential producers hip hop has ever seen. You know, and then seeing those things kind of manifest into Kid and Play, and Salt and Pepper, and like talk about that, like, you know, coming up in that crew, you know, from the ground level, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, that to me, it was It was a learning lesson for me because I was observing, and being observant is what kind of made me who I am today. Because I mean, I didn't come into this game wanting to be a record producer, right? But because I sat there and I watched Herbie produce records, it put that light bulb in my head and made me say, hey, maybe I could do that too. But had I not seen him do it, I probably would have never been interested in wanting to be a record producer, So, I mean, just being in the neighborhood wanting to DJ because I saw my brother do it, and then eventually starting wanting to rhyme, and then watching Herbie take that next step. I was the student watching, and I stayed on the sideline, and I would experiment. So I don't want to say his assistant, but I was a student, and so whatever ideas that I had, I would submit it to him, and then he would use them. And the fact that he used them led me to believe that, well, maybe I can do this myself, because if he's using my ideas, then, hey, maybe I got something here. Let me go ahead and try it myself, right? Yeah. So I've contributed to some songs that he's done, like,
for instance?
I'll Take Your Man, which was the drum programming. I helped him with the drum programming for that. And My Mic Sounds Nice, the Go-Go, and My Mic Sounds Nice. Yeah. And that Go-Go influence came from me going to Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And being around that element of style of music, I was able to introduce it to the group of people that I was around that lived in my neighborhood. So when, guys like Herbie and Kid and Play and these, Eric B and all these, dudes would come to Howard, what I'm saying? They would come to visit me, and I would take them around.
Hold on.
So, but yeah.
I'm sorry. Eric B. You just went. You talking about Eric
B,
and
Eric B
and Rakim.
Right, and G-Rap. I mean, I grew up with all of these guys. I mean, I've known G-Rap since Catholic school. You know what I'm saying? I've known Eric B ever since I was like maybe in second grade, because his brother John, his brother John and I, we were in like every single grade all the way up till sixth grade.
Crazy.
Yeah, so I knew Eric as Lewis Barrier. We called him Hook back in the day. So I know his whole family.
Call him Hook.
Yeah.
Why? He's hooking off on jokers?
Whatever. But that was his nickname. Shout out to Hook. But yeah. So going back to Herbie, so those records made me want to be a record producer. And so when I got the chance to do it as an MC, when I formed the rap group Two Kings and the Cypher at Howard with D-Dot, I decided to produce the records. But it was out of necessity. It's not like I wanted to be a producer, but the fact that I was able to lend my expertise to Herbie while he was working on production made me say, okay, well, since I've done that, well, let me go ahead and use that expertise to work on our album, right? Because just being in D.C. at the time and being at Howard D.C. was not a hip-hop city.
Go-go.
So, right. So it's not like you could find producers to produce records for you. Yeah, so I had to take it upon myself to do it. And so that's how I started getting into production. But my first production credit, which was writer's credit, I would say. It was a record called Hyped on the Mic on Salt and Pepper's album. I think it was the second album.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like legendary stuff you sharing with us right now. I'm at this point strictly a fan of the culture, a fan of the music. And when you started saying, Mic Sound Nice and I'll Take Your Man.
Right.
And I'm like,
and not to mention too, I did put out a song called Let the Drummer Get Ill while I was at Howard. Yeah, and that was released on a compilation that Herbie put out. And I was rapping on that record, yeah.
Wow. Now, how'd you get to Howard? Because you told me a story before I think the audience would appreciate in terms of, life's directions, how you kind of...
Yeah, well, I wasn't supposed to go to Howard originally, and the reason I went was because I had an older brother that went to Howard, and then I had an older sister that went to Howard, and then my younger sister decided she wanted to go to Howard, and because she was going, she thought that I should go. And that was the furthest thing from my mind. So one day she decides to fill out an application and submits it to Howard. So she was asking me for my grade point average and all this stuff. So I gave her all that information, not even thinking like, well, whatever.
Like she's just
she's just doing it, you know.
So your application.
She filled out my application.
Wow.
She filled out hers. I think she may have got accepted already, and then she's like, you know, I want my brother to come with me. So she goes and she fills it out. So then we're talking the end of July. So I'm hanging out with the friends. We're outside. Summer's hot. We're just doing our thing, going to parties, going up to Latin Quarter. We're just, you know, just enjoying ourselves. But everybody's doing their thing. Kid and Play. They're about to blow up. Herbie's got Salt and Pepper. And then I get this letter in the mail. And my mom's just like, come here, Ron. She said, Ronald, come here. Because you know, mom got West Indian accent. And she pulls out the envelope. And she says, you got accepted to Howard University. Wow. And I was like, huh? She said, hey, look at the letter. So I look at the letter. I look at it. And I'm like, wow. So then my heart's beating because I'm trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do? Because it says in 2 weeks, we have orientation.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking about this. I'm like, you know, I want to be an MC. And what's this Howard University thing? What is that about? Like, what am I going to do? So I had to think about it hard. I went to bed one night and I thought about it. And then I woke up the next day and I said, you know what? I'm going to have to break the news to these fellas. I think I'm going to go ahead and take that leap, open up the next door. So I go to the fellas and I'm like, I got accepted to Howard University and I think I'm going to go. And so they're looking at me like, dude, you serious? Like you ain't tell us you was going to Howard. And I said, I didn't know either. I just got the acceptance letter.
Right.
Yeah. But they didn't even believe me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I just, and then I had to explain to them, I said, you know, y'all got y'all stuff going. I don't have nothing going. And I almost feel like I'm lost. I don't know what to do. But maybe I do need a change because it's not like I got a record deal. And will I ever get a record deal? I don't know. Because everybody's focused on doing their own thing. So I said to myself, well, I need to take that leap and see what's on the other side. Because one thing I realized is that whenever I did that in life, it's always opened up another door for me.
Yeah.
Right? And so I took that leap.
Yeah.
And taking that leap and opening that door, it took me into a whole nother world that I didn't even expect. Like I never even knew that I was going to create an album and come out with a record deal and become a record producer. I mean, all this because I went to Howard University. Now, had I not made those steps, I always think to myself, where would I be today?
Well, that story is so important. It's like 1986, 86, 87. Right. It's important because, you know, you're 17, 18 years old. You know, most 17, 18-year-olds don't really know what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. They don't know what you're crossing over into adulthood, but your things aren't really established yet. Now you're on the precipice of this major cultural explosion called hip hop. You're like at the center of it. You're seeing these phenomenal groups get formed. Hit records is popping off. You have a little bit of influence going on, but you know your thing is not set up. You get the opportunity to go to Howard University, which, you know, in 1986, 87 seems like a whole nother country going to DC.
Yes.
From New York City.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, you know, where's this going to take me? And then you go to Howard, and immediately you're telling me that, you know, your experiences at Howard are actually contributing to what was going on at home with these records that Herbie's doing with the go-go sound. You're kind of sharing that. You're bringing, you know, them down, Eric B down. Like you're kind of like the doorway to DC, which becomes a major jump off for hip hop culture. Like, how did you feel being at Howard, being the man? Like you were the doorway to hip hop culture in a sense, no?
I wouldn't say I was the door to hip hop culture. I think I was sort of like a gateway to exposing them to what was going on in the DC culture. You know, as far as, you know, Salt and Pepper and Herbie and Kid and Play is concerned, because I was there. And they would come and they would visit me and they would hang out. Right.
Yeah, but you tell your friends in DC at Howard, Yeah, I know Kid and Play. This is my peoples. What did they say?
Well, no, but the crazy thing was they didn't believe me at first.
That's what I'm saying.
I would say, hey,
Right.
I know Eric B. I know G-Rap. But so what I started doing.
Sure you do.
Right. So
Right.
what I started doing was I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to go home on Thanksgiving breaks and Christmas breaks. I'm going to take pictures. Right. And I'm going to show off. Yeah. So I'd follow them throughout Latin Quarter and take a whole bunch of pictures and stuff like that. And I would bring them back to school and put them in a photo album. And the cats would come to the room and they would look at my photo album.
Instagram.
Yeah, that was our Instagram. They, you know him, you know Sweet Tea, you know this person, that person. Yeah, so then they started coming to the school, and that kind of solidified it all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So and the crazy thing is I have all these pictures, right? By the way, I'm going to try to do some type of pictorial book with them, but I got all these pictures from back then that I saved. Crazy. Chris Rock and all these guys coming to Latin Quarter with Jerry Kerr, all kind of stuff. It's crazy back then. Yeah.
Wow.
But just at Howard, we were building something because coming to Howard at the time, there was nothing hip hop about Howard when I got there. Nothing. We had to build that culture at Howard. Yeah. But it wasn't there. Yeah. In '86, it wasn't there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you coming from, like, where you coming from, Queens, New York, you in the center of the culture.
Right.
You experiencing the quarters, you're experiencing, the park jams, you're seeing some of the legends early before they were like, the national treasures. They're just like New York City treasures.
Yeah.
And then you go to Howard University, and you bring that flavor to Howard, which, you said it was strictly go-go, but you got people from all around the country, West Coast, Chicago, down south, Texas, all converging to DC, sharing in this new thing, right? And just I could just imagine how, looking back, how amazing that whole experience could be. You shared one story with me that you're the first person to take one of the greatest moguls ever into the studio. Like that's like that, when you're talking about being inspired by Herbie, you inspiring this person, namely Sean Combs, aka
yes. I took him to his first studio session, recording studio session. Yeah, it was a Kid and Play session at that.
Wow. See?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. When you think of like Herbie, Herbie was Puff before Puff.
No, he definitely was. I think Herbie was the blueprint for what we see producers doing today in terms of being in all up in the videos. Herbie was the originator.
Yeah. He was.
And that was only done because at the time he started doing it with Salt-N-Pepa, doing it with shows because he kind of had to show them the way. So being on stage with them kind of gave them confidence, which catapulted it to him being in the videos as well. Yeah, and then with Kid and Play and with Dana Dane and everybody else he produced, that just became part of it. And then the Teddy Rileys and the Diddies and everybody else followed after. But Herbie was definitely the blueprint for that.
Yeah, somebody who I don't think gets enough respect and credit and notoriety in terms of his influence on the culture. So everybody you just named plus so many others, Herbie kind of inspired, a whole wave.
Yeah.
But now, you're in Howard, you're in DC, and you decide that you want to start producing. Yeah. Like how did that jump off? Where you go, it's time for me to kind of get my feet.
Yeah. Well, what that happened was after Two Kings in a Cypher. See, we had finished one album and we were working on the second album. And in the midst of that, the label gets dropped. So if the label gets dropped, whoever signed to that label, they get dropped too. So when the label lost their deal, that was it for us. So now I'm in DC trying to figure out my next move. So what do I do, right? And so then D-Dot figures, well, I'm not going to stay in DC. I'm going to go to New York because he's got an opportunity to road manage Mary J. Blige.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I jumped ahead. See,
Yeah.
I got things
Now-
got mixed up. I thought you started producing before Two Kings in the Cypher.
No. Two Kings in a Cypher was the crash course to being a producer. Because while working on the album, I learned to become a record producer because I had to produce the records. And that's how I started producing. I did the whole album. So that right there led me to production. I said, okay, you know, I'm not gonna rhyme anymore. I'm gonna focus on production now. After I lost the deal, it's just all about focusing on producing. I had produced this record called "Hyped on the Mic" for Salt and Pepper, and I gave the files to Herbie, and Salt and Pepper recorded the vocals, and Herbie added a little more to the record. Record got completed, released on the second album. I think it was Assault with a Deadly Weapon. And I got a royalty check. My first royalty check, the most money I ever seen in my life. It must have been like maybe $8,000 at the time.
That was big.
Yeah, I didn't know how to act. I'm like, shit, $8,000?
It's $80,000 in today's mathematics.
Yes, so I'm buying a car. I'm trying to buy me a car, you know? So I go down to the used car lot down on Rhode Island, maybe Rhode Island Avenue, one of them spots. And I'm looking at this Jetta. And it was like a, mind you, we're talking 1989. I'm looking at the 85 model Jetta, used car and whatnot. And I'm seeing this girl, I'm trying to impress her. And my pops ain't having it. He's like, yo, I'm not putting you on my insurance. But the used car lot won't sell me the car unless I have insurance. Yeah. So make a long story short, I can't get the car. So now I'm pissed. So I go home and I'm telling my buddy Dave, who lives across the street from me, you know, I'm staying in Slow Hall. Slow Hall's a dormitory at Howard University. So Dave lives across the street from me. So I go over to Dave's crib and I'm like, yo, you know, I can't get the car. So he's like, you know what, man? You love hip hop. You got this group. I see you traveling back and forth trying to get somebody to make beats for you in New York. Why don't you buy this drum machine and make your own beats? So I'm not too sure about that. I'm like, you know, I don't know, man. He said, you know what? Just go home, think about it. When you wake up tomorrow morning, if you've changed your mind, just call me and I'll drive you out to this music store called Chuck Levin's in Wheaton, Maryland. So I said, okay, bet. I go home. I toss and turn all night, sweating, pillow sheet soaking, the pillowcase soaking, bed sheet soaking wet.
It's a major decision.
Major decision, yeah. Taking my shirt off, sleeping with no clothes on. So I wake up the next morning. I'm like, Dave, man, take me to Chuck Levin's. Let's go. 11 o'clock a.m. sharp. Picked me up in his BMW. And we shot out to Wheaton, Maryland. And I took that check and I bought that drum machine.
Nice. Big shout out to Dave.
Dave McDonald. Yeah, Dave McDonald. Big shout out, bro.
You put the battery in your back.
Put the battery in my back.
Yeah, man.
And that drum machine changed my life, man.
Yeah.
That was the best decision I made in my life. Had I not got that drum machine, or had my pop said, like, hey, you know, Ryan, I'm going to put you on my insurance, let's get that car, I would never got that drum machine, which meant that I would have never been able to make those beats for Two Kings in the Cypher, which would have meant that maybe we would have never gotten a record deal, and I wouldn't be a record producer till this day. Wow. And Hypnotize and all those records would have never came out.
Yeah. So that's just, like, all these stories I think are so important, especially for the younger generation coming up. You know, when they're at a crossroads in their own lives, you know, and it seems like doors are closing and other doors are opening.
Right.
Or if you have to take the leap of faith, you know, take that leap.
Take that leap, yeah.
Take that leap. So
my thing is, you should never be afraid of change. One of my favorite books, it's called Who Moved My Cheese?
I love that book.
Yeah, and that book tells you how you should never be afraid of change. Never be afraid. You should never be too comfortable. Because you just never know what the world has in store for you.
Yeah.
Always be prepared to move and make a change in your life. You know, even if it's in your bedroom, change your furniture around. Just do something different each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Muslim community has a saying, Allah is the best of planners,
Uh-huh.
right? And that kind of translates for me is that, certain times circumstances change beyond your control.
Yeah.
And it's best just to go with it and let God take over. Let that higher power, that higher force take over. And it 9 times out of 10, it will be beneficial for your growth.
Yeah, well, when you just think about life in general, it's all about going with the flow. Just look at the river. Just going with the flow.
Yeah.
But if you try to go against the current, you're gonna lose. You try to hold on, like in the Chinese saying, you try to hold on to those branches against the current, you're gonna get tired eventually. And, so, but if you just let it go, you just go with the flow, because that's what nature is, letting things go. You're supposed to go with the flow, and where it's gonna take you is where it's gonna go.
Yeah. So now this particular point in your life, the flow took you to this drum machine.
Yeah.
And then you was the man on campus with the drum machine.
Oh yeah.
They talk about that, because that became like a magnet for a lot of folks.
Yeah, because it had never been done before at Howard University. So I was the first one with a drum machine on campus. And so while everybody's studying, I'm making beats. You're walking down the hallway, and then you hear, you know how you hear that echo in the gym with a, so that's what you hear when you're walking down the hallway. And then people are trying to figure out, where's this music coming from? So if you was going around Lawrence's dorm room, all you had to do was just follow the thump, and you was there. Yeah. So cats was coming to see me. They knew, and dudes knew it was me. If they knew, okay, he's the producer, that he lives 506. That's where he's at right there. Where the music is playing, that's where Ron is at. Yeah. Yeah, so everybody used to come to my room at that point because I was making beats. And so if you want to hear raw hip hop, joints, tracks, that was new at the time. And nobody else was doing it. I was the first one on Howard University's campus with a drum machine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's to jump off for Two Kings in the Cypher. Is any other artists that got inspired, that became came to 506 and caught a beat, caught a track, caught a early Ron Lawrence joint?
Mitty had his crew, One Step Beyond.
Yeah.
They was coming. Yeah, I worked on their demo. They was coming down to the spot. But eventually, when I moved over to 12th Street, I had Drew Hill come through. They were Legacy at the time.
Damn.
Yeah, so I helped work on their demo. Cisco and I we worked on the joint. Yeah, so I remember Ananda Lewis came through, but we never did anything. But I remember Rhonda Berry bought it by the crib. Who else can I think of at the time? Man, there was just so much stuff going on.
Yeah, like these memories are golden, man. He said, first of all, Howard University is like the capital of black culture on the collegiate level. You got hip hop culture in the flesh, and Ron Lawrence. Speaking of that,
yeah,
the Fez.
Oh yeah, the Golden Fez. Yeah,
the Fez.
Fez.
I'm
the crown.
I'm a conscious brother.
Yeah, there's some history behind the Fez. Well, Fez is actually it's the capital of Morocco. For those who don't know that, and so the hat is named after the city, but it symbolized scholarship, scholarly, being smart. Because if you look at the tassel, just look at when you graduate, you have the hat with the tassel on it. But the foundation comes from the Fez. It comes from being scholarly.
Wow.
And it started in Morocco. So being a Moor, that was the symbol.
Yeah. When I got put on to Two Kings in the Cypher through Barry, who I went to school with at Wagner College. He was telling me about this group that he was about to do a video for. And he was like, yo, Hawk, I'm telling you, you're going to be into them because, I'm knee deep into the consciousness. I'm black power all day, red, black, and green, you know what I mean? Right? So he's like, yo, you're going to feel, I'm telling you, you're going to, this D.I. Angeletti and Ron Lawrence, and Ron got the Fez. And I'm like, okay, word, okay. So all into the Egyptian. It's Ron, Amin, Ron, Lawrence. I'm heavy into Egyptology, chematology, actually.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And yeah, so at that time, too, that was a... It was kind of different because I saw a lane that a lot of guys didn't take. They touched it, but they didn't really go there fully with it, right? And me being, an avid studier of the whole Kemet movement and the third eye and all that stuff. I wanted to bring that into hip hop. I wanted to talk about the pineal gland. I wanted to talk about melanin and all that stuff. And cats weren't talking about that back then. Not everything is melanated this, melanated that. But if you go back to 1989 and listen to my album, I was dropping all those jewels back then. Yeah. So that was something different. And when we did it, it went over people's heads because that wasn't really, it wasn't a popular vocabulary at the time.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of people didn't know what a cipher was. They didn't know what pineal gland was. They didn't know none of that shit. So it was just, now you drop an album and talk about that stuff, that's like common knowledge.
Yeah, well,
right?
the internet.
Exactly.
Yeah, woke culture. There's a lot of groundwork that had to be laid, and you were kind of responsible for laying that early groundwork.
Yeah, so it was a lot of making fun of at the time because people didn't understand it. But whenever you do something new, sometimes you do get ridiculed. Right? The Fez, I got ridiculed for that too, because that was different. But I knew what it was, but it just took a while for people to catch on.
Right.
And sometimes when you're too early, you could be the butt of all jokes because people just don't get it.
Yeah, but they don't get the last laugh.
Right. So I'll be honest, I didn't really like go-go music like that. I wasn't really a fan of it. But there were certain beats that I did like. And when I heard Sardines and Pork and Beans, I liked that record. And I liked it because it was a recording. Go-go is usually live. Yeah. And I'm not really into live stuff like that. But it was something about Sardines and Pork and Beans, and maybe because it was a recorded record that it just caught my ear, and I was just like, whoa. So I went out and bought the record, and I sent it to Herbie. I said, yo, you got to hear this. Yeah. And it was two. It was that side, and it was the B side called The Word. Yeah, so he took that, and he used it for My Mic Sounds Nice. Yeah. So that's how that happened. No, excuse me, not My Mic Sounds Nice. He used it for, yes, it was My Mic Sounds Nice. Right. Now, I'll Take Your Man, which was before My Mic Sounds Nice. That record was because of Rock the Bells. We were a big fan of LL Cool J.
Of course.
Yeah. And Herbie wanted to make a record like that. So he did I'll Take Your Man. And we knew about EU because there was a breakbeat back in the days.
Before the butt.
Right. And it was called Knock 'Em Out Sugar Ray. Right. So we were very well aware of that. So that was an early influence for us as well. And so when he worked on I'll Take Your Man, I laid down a drum pattern for him. I sounded it with my mouth because I didn't know how to use the drum machine at the time.
Beatbox.
Right. So he
Elements
used that.
of hip hop.
Exactly. So he used the drum pattern, and he laid it down for My Mic Sounds for I'll Take Your Man. But that was my contribution. The rest of that record he finished that record on his own. He added all the bells and whistles and all the other shit. I had nothing to do with that. I just
produced it.
Yeah. So I just helped with the drum programming on that.
Yeah, but I mean, still, it's the idea of you again leaving New York City.
Yeah.
Being in DC, being influenced and sharing that.
Right. So them coming to Howard University and then being exposed to go-go music made them fall in love with it. Yeah. So I was definitely instrumental in opening that door to go-go because I was there. And not because I loved the go-go, but because I was in DC. Right? And, so that was part of the exposure.
It's like, part of going with the flow. You're going with the flow. You're being immersed in this new culture. Whether you totally got with it or not, it influenced you enough to share certain ideas which ended up being major ideas.
Right.
So again, it's just the jewel in that lesson is that you never know what things are going to turn into. Don't be afraid to dibble and dabble, experiment, open your mind. You don't have to totally 100% embrace it for it to lead you somewhere that's bigger than necessarily your feelings on the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think all that's dope. All that's very dope. But staying in DC, I got another story I want you to elaborate on because it's so you would finally end up getting a car.
Oh yeah.
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 I mean, you got a kind of a funny story about that car, and that kind of, as much as it created a barrier between you and somebody else. Oh, that was a rental though, right? That was the rental.
That's a rental car. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, because that's again, the relationship in the rest of your career and how the rest like that's a kind of a integral part to the story. So, earlier you talked about introducing Puff to his first studio session, right? And how did that relationship kind of mature? How did it grow? Like, were you guys friends like that, or did it, would eventually turn into something?
Well, originally what happened was, like everybody else on campus that knew that I was that I had some kind of connection to the industry, was kind of flocking to me a little bit, because they saw my albums and stuff like that, my photo albums and stuff. So, word kind of got around. Yeah. And then Puffy knew that I had connections and he wanted to be in the music industry. Mm-hmm. So I know at the time he was hanging around Dougie Fresh. Mm-hmm. And, but he couldn't quite get to Doug. He couldn't quite get too close to Doug because Doug would roll with a big entourage. Mm-hmm. And he had a problem with that. So he couldn't really make the moves that he wanted to. So he came to me and said, look, man, I want to hang out with you. And because I want to get to meet some people. So
was it like that? He said, yo, I want to hang out with you because I want to meet some people? Or was it just he was hanging around trying to meet some people?
No, he told me he wanted to hang out with me.
Wow.
Yeah, he told me he wanted to hang out. And I was cool. I was cool with it. I was like, yeah, we can hang. Mm-hmm. And at the time, my brother lived literally right down the street from Puff, like maybe 6 houses away from Puffy in Mount Vernon, right? So I would go visit my brother, and then I would go pick up Puff, and then we would just drive down to the city, mm-hmm. right? And we would go places. Like I took him to his first studio session, took him to a couple of clubs with me. That was, maybe Kid and Play was performing or G-Rap was performing, and I would introduce him to cats and stuff like that. And there was one particular incident where we were at Howard, and it may have been maybe spring break or something like that, right? And I had good credit because at the time when I was living in Mount Vernon and my brother, I was working in Terrytown. And I was working on the assembly line. It was this dope-ass summer job, and I was making some crazy money like I was a grown-up and shit, right? Because, grown folks was working there. Yeah. But I had some kind of hookup my brother had. So I was coming home with, like, fat checks and whatnot. I had good credit. Said my pockets was, like, swole.
Credit.
Yeah, so, and then Puff knew because, I would pull out the MX car when I was with him and whatnot. So he knew, all right, cool, okay. So one day he came up to me. He was like, yo, Ha. Yeah, I want to rent this record. I want to rent this car, huh? Because we going home for spring break, and we trying to. So I was like, no problem. You want me to rent a car for you? So I was just like, I thought about it. I was like, shit. I was like, all right, son, I'll do it for you. So we go to the spot. I rent the car. I give him the car, and not really thinking.
What kind of car was it?
I don't even remember what kind of car it was.
Okay.
But I didn't really think anything of it at the time. So I get a phone call before they even leave D.C. to go back to Mount Vernon.
Early.
I get a call, and he's like, yo, I need you to come down to Maryland, because that's where he was staying. And I was like, why? He's like, yo, son crashed the car and he hit a tree, and I need you to come talk to the police and let them know that you was driving the car. Oh. And I'm like, what? So
scrambling.
Yeah, so his man Walt G didn't have license. His man Walt G drives the car to a ditch and hits a tree into some neighbor's house or some shit. So now I gotta go explain to the cops that I was driving the car. So I was like, dude, you said, like, exactly. So then I'm like, Nah, I can't do that, man. You know. So I was like, all right. So let me just figure out how to get out there. I don't even remember how I got out there. I'm not sure if a friend drove me out there, but or he came. I don't know, but I know I end up getting out to Maryland. Okay. So when I get to Maryland, I'm looking at the trees all scraped up and shit. And they must have towed the car or whatever. So then I go sit and talk to the policeman. And so the cop is just like, so it's me, Puffy, and the police. And we just sitting there. And the police is he's asking me what happened. So Puff, he's coaching me on what I'm supposed to tell the police. So you know what I'm saying? So I'm nervous. So I'm in front of the cop, and I'm trying to tell the cop what happened. So I'm fumbling on my words because I don't want to say the wrong thing. So the cop is looking at me like said, "Man, look, if I wake up on the wrong side of the bed tomorrow, if I don't get no ass, then you're gonna get 10 points in your license." Right? So I tell him the story. Told him I was driving a car. So I guess he ain't get no ass the next day. Because I get points on my license. Credit gets ruined. Because I'm chasing Puffy so he can give me the money so I can pay off the debt that was charged on my credit card.
Wow.
Right? And I get points on my license. So that kind of fucked me up. But the most important thing for me was my credit getting fucked up.
Yeah.
Right? Because me having to chase this dude around to have him pay the bill that I couldn't pay because now I'm in school. I don't have a job. The fat pockets is gone. Like I done wasted that money already. I bought gear and all kind of shit. Right? So me and him fall out over that. Like it just left a real bitter taste in my mouth. With Puff over just sticking me for that, you know what I'm saying? Like that was some fucked up shit, you know. But anyway,
now you know I'm laughing because you know it's college.
It's college,
and it's one of those coming of age stories that we all have. We all got one of those stories.
Right. So, but he gets on now. Now he's Puff Daddy.
Right.
So now I gotta face the funk. He's Puff Daddy. And I'm like, okay, well, now I gotta bite the bullet because I want to get down. So am I still mad at this nigga now? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So now he knows I don't fuck with him like that, right? But he's Puff Daddy and he got Bad Boy Entertainment. But I got heat.
Well, all right. At this point, he's Puffy. He got Bad Boy Entertainment. So this is the car crash happened during the Uptown years, or was it before?
This was before Uptown.
Before Uptown.
He didn't even get to Uptown yet.
Right. So, you know, there's time in between this incident and when he actually gets Bad Boy Entertainment. And, you know, and a lot, you know, we know the story. This guy, there's a lot that happens. Tragedy has happened from that point, you know, to this point. So you're seeing all of this happen. Now you graduated from Howard yet at this point?
No, we were still at Howard, yeah.
You still have, so you're seeing all this happen, and like I said earlier, you know, you were the gateway to the culture for jokers, right? And as much as you know, he's Puff Daddy, he got Bad Boy Entertainment, you know, he's putting you on, you put him on, you walked him through the door of his success, you know. So to sit and know this dude crashed your car, got you in the bind, messed your credit up, woo. And now he's, I mean, how did you feel? How are you sitting back looking at all this? Like, you like, oh, fuck that nigga. Or you like, damn, this nigga fuck owe me some money. This nigga,
yeah, I mean,
fucking money, nigga.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I was kind of salty for a minute, you know what I'm saying? But then when there was an opportunity to work with him, like, you know, he was kind of cold because he knew he had something that I wanted. Damn. So he was kind of cold, you know what I'm saying? So he made me sweat.
But say,
he made me sweat for it.
That's some bullshit.
You know what I'm saying? So I think out of all the dudes, all the hitmen, I think I had to work the hardest.
Wow. See, that's some bullshit because
them niggas had it easy. I had to bust my ass.
The first person to take him to
but I had to bust my ass, literally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I had to work for that shit, yo. So for a whole year, I didn't get no work. You know? And it was to the point where I was going to leave.
Yeah. Well, before we get there, I still want to kind of you know, like things are happening. Two Kings in Cipher has happened and kind of went its way, and that's a whole nother story that we need. Just those sessions with Gambling Huff and going up to Philadelphia and doing things, and like you got so many of those stories about how the Two Kings in the Cipher thing came into fruition. That I think is very valuable information. Yeah. I kind of want you to share. I don't want to gloss over that.
Yeah, no, that was definitely an integral part to going up the road, climbing up the ladder to success. Mm-hmm. Because, Philadelphia International opened up the doors for us at an early stage in our career because we were able to go into a studio to record. Mm-hmm. Because of our manager. Mm-hmm. His name is Haq Islam, who was A&Ring for Philly International at the time. Mm-hmm. And, when he heard the demo, he wanted to manage the group, mm-hmm. right? But he was living in Philly, which meant we would have to travel there every other week, mm-hmm. every other weekend, right? So we had to dedicate ourselves and fit that into our schedule. Mm-hmm. And I was working a job at the time, so I would have to tell the boss, hey, every other week I'm going to Philly. Mm-hmm. Let's squeeze this in, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we would drive out there. We would, with the help of friends who had cars, my boy Skeeter, shout out to Skeet, he would ride us out there, and we would sleep on Hawk's floors. Hawk had no furniture, so we slept on the floor, mm-hmm. And we would record songs at Philly International, and we were exposed to a lot. We got to see and meet a lot of the songwriters from back in the days that was still hanging around, mm-hmm. That wrote a lot of those records. They were there.
Name some of those records.
Name some of the records?
Yeah.
Records like 10% and My Love Is Free, written by Bunny Siegler. I got to meet him. I got to meet Dexter Wanzel, the guy who did the Money Power Respect original sample. Mm-hmm. He used to hang around. He was one of the arrangers for Philadelphia International. For MFSB as well, and he's put out a couple of albums himself. Guys like Bruce Hawes, who wrote for the Spinners, and all these other great artists that were under the Mighty Three Music, Tom Bell and those guys, and Huff and all of them. So so I got to meet a lot of songwriters and Kenny and Huff. They were like teachers to us. They would sit in our sessions and listen to our mixes and stuff, and give us pointers. And I was a student. I would sit there and I would learn. I would watch Kenny listen to the mixes, listen to tell me how the vocal should fit or should sit on a song and stuff like that. We got to sit with their mastering engineers. We were able to pull out some of the master recordings on the 24-inch tapes that they had in their vaults. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I think we destroyed one of the 24-track inches, or 24-inch...
2-inch tapes.
2-inch tapes, yeah. There's a record called You're Gonna Make Me Love Somebody Else by the Jones Girls.
Ooh, you gonna make me love somebody else.
Oh! We pulled... Yeah, so...
You ruined that.
What happened was we pulled the we pulled the 24-track out of the vault. And when those tracks, if they sit there for a long time, the tape gets stuck together, right? I think you're supposed to do something, some kind of type of baking or something. You got to do something to kind of just loosen up the film on the tape, so
adhesive.
Right, yeah. So the engineer, I think his name was Jim Gallagher. Yeah, he took the tape out and put it on the 24-track. And because we were doing, we wanted to take some of the instruments out so we could sample them and stuff like that. So while the 2-inch reel is playing on the machine, the heads start to eat up the tape while it's playing. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, we're ruining the actual 24-track to the Jones Girls. You're gonna make me love somebody else. So I had to tell them, yo, stop the tape. Like, yo, we can't do this no more. Yeah, so that was
wow, that's one of my favorite records, bro.
Yeah.
And y'all fucked it up. Y'all on some bullshit.
Well, but the good thing is they have those records get mastered.
Okay.
You know,
Uh-huh.
they get mastered onto 2-inch and I mean not to quarter inch. They get mastered to quarter inch, and then from there, it's like the duplicates and stuff. That's all
Right.
you know. All we hear in streaming. That's all for that.
Yeah, but
you know
the
what I'm saying?
original,
But the original
master,
they
is
cannot
the,
remix it. Let's say if they came back and said, hey, you know what, we got a new version of. Remember when the 12-inch came out back in the 70s? They were remixing everything and making them 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
You can't do that to that record anymore.
You know, we talking about Philadelphia International. You talking about some of the greatest artists of all time coming up out of there, and you know, you guys are learning from Gamblin' Huff. You know, and you know, you talking about the OJs, you talking about Teddy Pendergrass, and you know some of the other folks.
Yeah, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. You got 3 Degrees. You got D.D. Sharp Gamble, Archie Bells and the Drells.
Damn.
And then you got Spinners, and you got Stylistics, Patti LaBelle, Phyllis Hyman. The list goes on,
Shit.
man.
Now we name our show was Old School, New School Rules.
Yeah.
Right. And at that time, you were the new school cats.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what was the feeling between the old school legends seeing this new school genre being created? You said they were supportive, but was there any?
They were supportive, but it was different because we were sampling. They didn't quite understand it, but what Kenny Gamble did know was it involved publishing, right? And at that point in this stage of their career, they had moved into just focusing on publishing alone, right? They weren't really putting out artists when we got there, not really. So the sampling game to them, they were just salivating at the mouth, like, yo, sample our stuff, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Because that was more income for them. It was whatever records they had that came out 10, 15 years ago, you could reintroduce them again. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you know, all the old school cats, quote unquote, didn't feel that same way in terms of sampling. They looked at it as stealing, as cheating, as the new school cats aren't playing real instruments. They're not really creating. They're just recycling.
Yeah.
Right. That's a different take.
It's a different take. I think with every technology that comes out, things get more simpler. And when it becomes more simpler, it becomes easy to the point where the old generation say you're cheating. But what it does is it puts them out of job, out of work. And a lot of these guys don't want to conform because they're so in love with the art form of how they did it and the work that they put into it that they don't want to move to that level. But like anything else, technology is always going to get better and things are always going to get easier. You just have to learn the format of how you do things. And it can be lucrative for you. You know, but and I hate to say it, but we always talk about AI, which is the same thing, really. And there's going to become a time where, and it's happening now, where things become so much easier than they used to be. And I could do stuff that, experts can do with the technology, but the experts, they get left out because they don't want to learn the new technology. And I could do it better than them now, or even quicker. Not better, but so much quicker. Something that it'll take an expert to do in a month, I could probably do it in a day with AI. Right?
For sure.
Right. So I think it's about, when it comes to sampling, or even, just sampling for that matter, just in how we made music, what it did was it eliminated the orchestra. It eliminated the whole band. It eliminated almost everybody who had a job creating those records. You didn't need a bass player to come in and play a bass who had a paid scale, or a guitarist. Or if you had a string section, like those guys were out of work, because if you had a keyboard, you could play all those parts now. And then you had a sequencer, and then you had the sampler for the drums. So what happens now, these guys get put out of work because they didn't want to learn the new technology.
Wow.
Right?
No, but hearing Gamblin' Huff embrace it because they understood publishing.
Right.
And, since we own the publishing on all this catalog, we want people to use our stuff because that's how we gonna eat.
Exactly. Yeah. So it became a lucrative business for them, and it kept their publishing catalog alive because guys like Jay-Z, what more can I say? Of course, Money, Power, and Respect, and so many other records like Biz Markie, Just a Friend, and the list goes on. I mean, those.
Hypnotize.
That's not them. But the big pun record, the big. I'm not a player. I crush a lot. Yeah, you're right. I think that's OJ's. Yeah. So they love hip hop right now. Come on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Now, okay, Two Kings in a Cypher, kind of crescendos, and you start producing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And D Dot does what? He hooks up with Puff somehow.
Right. He starts road managing Mary J. Blige. Yeah, Puffy hires him to road manage Mary. So he goes on the road with her.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I'm sending him beats, and he shops them on the side. Mm-hmm. So that was the deal that we had. I make the beats, you shop them. Yeah. And let's see where it goes.
Yeah, that's interesting that you guys, as a group, stay together, but behind the scenes as production and A&R management. That's kind of dope.
Yeah,
to be able to maintain that relationship. But you're more behind the scenes. You're like in the cut.
Right.
You don't have that direct relationship anymore with Puff, which is weird to me. But you explained it.
Yeah. Well, things happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be for the best. We all go our different ways, you know what I'm saying? And, hey, but just got to make the best of it.
But Dot being in pocket with Puff, at what point do you get that call like, yo, you need to start, putting some stuff together for this guy?
Oh, yeah. Well, what happened was, Derek plays a lot of stuff for Puff and gets him hyped, right? So he's interested. He's interested in signing Derek as a hitman, because he's forming the hitman, and so Derek comes to me and says, "Well, Puffy's creating the hitman, but since I'm shopping your beats, you should sign the deal." And I'm saying, well, he doesn't know me to make the beats. So if you're playing them, then maybe we need to come together and sign a deal as a unit.
Right. Now,
right? Because I don't have a relationship with him like that.
I'm sorry. I'm fucked up over that shit still.
Right.
That shit's 30-some odd years ago. And I'm fucked up because, you introduced Puff to the world. Like, to the music world via, taking him to these different studio sessions, introducing him to that. The car thing happened. Okay, I get that. But, if the guy who kind of introduced me to the game is producing, I want to hear that shit. I want a word. Like, whatever happened with that car is what happened with that car. But I'm interested because, you're the culture. For me, it's Hakeem Green talking now, right? You're knowing your history, knowing who you were around, what you saw, from the level you saw it at. I know you know what it is. You know what I mean? So him not looking at it like that to me is just the weirdest shit to me.
Yeah, but he didn't really know my potential. He saw my potential within a year's time because he knew the artist would come to me and they'd be like, yo, I want that Ron Lawrence shit. You know what I'm saying? Because I started going to them. I started going to Mace. I started going to Black Rob, and they would record my shit.
Right.
So he knew. He was like, okay. So when it was time for me to bounce, he was like, oh, slow down, don't go nowhere. Right. Because he knew the artist was fucking with me.
Right. But what was the first Ron Lawrence produced Bad Boy hit
that came out? On Bad Boy? It was Hypnotize. Yeah, that was Hypnotize. That was the first release song.
Wow. Yeah. And the first time I heard that song, we were coming back from Brazil, Channel Live, and the anticipation on Biggie's second album was just like, it was the most anticipated, follow-up ever at that point, right? And we land at JFK. We get in the car and turn on Hot 97, Ed Lover, Dr. Dre, and they played that joint like probably 9 times, bro. And
But you know what though? When he figured out that I could make I was doing the shit like that. I was his best friend at that point.
wow,
Because I was hitting fucking balls out the park.
right?
Like Faith Evans, all that shit. We went outside of Bad Boy. We started doing Brian McKnight, Boys to Men. We started doing LL Cool J, R. Kelly. He was killing it.
Yeah. But Hypnotize,
Right.
right? Herb Alpert, Rise, like a huge record. Like we grew up on that record. You know, that record was breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a lot of us, right?
Right.
You know, our parents loved that record, jazzy record with the horn, just that shit, right? So it's like it's a obvious, but not obvious, not as a hip hop record. Like what inspired that to create that? What how that come about?
Well, that came about because we were going to an island in Trinidad. We were going to Trinidad, and we needed ideas, you know, and that happened to be one of the records that we created while we were down there. You know what I'm saying? I bought records. D-Dot bought records. We went through those records, and that was one of the joints that we decided like we're going to do this right here, you know, because it was a record that both of us loved as kids. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I remember it being in the soap operas. What is it? All My Children, I think it was. And I also remember it as a kid in the parks. And I'm pretty sure, you know, D-Dot comes from his musical background, and you know, we had similar tastes when it came to choosing a lot of records. Yeah. So that was definitely a you know, a joint contribution between the two of us to make something come to life. And you know, Biggie loved it.
You didn't know it was gonna be a first single.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was going to be anything like that.
Wow.
Like I just had no idea.
Yeah.
I knew the record was hot,
Right.
but I didn't know the record would be as big as it is today.
See, like, so just to
As a matter of fact, all the records that I do or that I've done, I had no idea those records were going to be as big as they are like 20, 30 years later.
let's see, like we were hypnotized. Let me just describe the environment, the time period, right? So, you know, the West Coast after the Chronic, after Snoop's album, kind of had the music industry in a chokehold. Like hip hop had officially moved from New York, and it lived in L.A. Right? And when, you know, Puff and Big dropped Ready to Die, and of course Wu-Tang, it was kind of like New York going, nah, nigga, nah, we still got this shit, you know. And then so the follow up, you know, it's called the sophomore jinx. Everybody's, you know, second project kind of just never reaches the heights that the first project, you know. So waiting on this second project for Big, everybody was at the edge of their seat, like, all right, what's he gonna come with? What's he gonna sound like? You know, Big could give you like these gutter records, you know, and you know we already saw with Juicy and the other records that he could give you these big commercial records, right? So it was like, you know, is he gonna come something for the street, or is he gonna come something for the commercial audience? And to hear Hypnotize lyrically, you know, is street all day,
Right.
but the music was so, you know, over the top. But it was a perfect marriage. I don't think anybody else could have pulled that off.
Right.
So, like, the ear for you guys, you and Dot, to know or think or imagine how would his voice sound on this. Like, was there any of that going on where you're kind of like trying to really cook it up, or is it just something that jumped out at you?
Well, to be honest with you, making that record, we were making records for all the artists in mind, whether if it was for Big or if it was for the Locks. You know, in my mind, there was no particular artist that I said, okay, well, this is going to go to big. Okay. You know, that was Puffy's decision when he heard it, and he said that's Biggie's first single. You know, because the minute we took it down to lay it on 24 tracks, and when he heard it, and we were in Trinidad, and we rented these big ass stadium speakers, because the speakers that we had in the studio couldn't withstand the amplitude of the sound we were trying to get. So we had to rent stadium speakers to put in the studio. Damn. Right? Yeah, and it was so loud I had to wear earplugs because I didn't want to destroy my eardrums. But yeah, and he was pumping that shit up so freaking loud, and he kept saying, "Yo, this is Biggie's." Biggie hadn't even heard the record yet. Biggie is in New York with a broken leg, right, being pushed around in a wheelchair, and yeah, so we were all excited. Wow. We did all these joints out there, but that was one of the ones that stood out to him, and he knew automatically that was gonna be Biggie's first single.
Well, I like the way you said that because it really shines light on Puffy's value as a music guy,
right.
His ear,
right,
and knowing what's gonna work, what's not gonna work,
exactly.
How it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people say he don't really produce, he don't really do this, or he not really doing that, and you know, I don't ever.
But one thing he has is a great ear.
Yeah,
he knows. Like, he practically picked all his records, like, these were the hits. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Ron Lawrence, the
Yes,
Amin Ra, a hit man. Definitely a hit man. And you got hits, my nigga. You got hits.
Got hits, my man.
So, what's some of your favorite Ron Lawrence hits?
Where I'm From, Love Like This, Money, Power, Respect. Phenomenon. You Should Be Mine, Brian McKnight. Hypnotize.
The Notorious B.I.G.
Notorious B.I.G.
Now, we're going to talk about this later. But Where I'm From, briefly, what's so special about that song, that production?
Well, what's special to me is the fact that it was a record. It was a song that was finished on the spot, you know, and it was done in the studio, the final production. Like, it wasn't the way Jay heard it when he rhymed, wasn't the way it ended up after he put the lyrics on it. Right, so yeah, I was pretty proud of that because I think when he put those lyrics to that record or to the song rather, it gave me an idea of what direction I should take that particular beat. And what he was talking about in the song, it was so gangster and so sinister that I had to give it a sinister feel. Yeah. You know, and if anybody knew what my music sounded like pre Bad Boy, they would tell you my shit sounded like movie soundtracks, right? Because I used to love to make tracks like that, real sinister sounding. So when you hear Where I'm From, it has that element of sinister, right? So when he put those lyrics to the record, I knew I had to give it that touch. Yeah. So he gave me a direction because of what he was talking about in the song. Yeah. So when you hear those echoes like the you know, and the beat, boom, boom, boom. It's a gangster feel. It has that.
It's so
gangster knock.
It's so Marcy.
Yes.
If you've ever been to Marcy Projects, that section
dark.
of Brooklyn at night, that's the anthem.
Right.
Yeah.
So so the track had to paint. It had to paint the story. It had to paint the canvas for the story to live in. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Now, you named some of your, most well-known hits. What's some of your not so well-known songs, hits? Because you named some names earlier that I think people would be so surprised that the Ron Amin Ron Lawrence touch got put to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did a record called "In for Life" by the Terror Squad. I did this record called "My Time to Go" with Lord Tariq and Peter Guns. Also produced for Rakim, Uplift, and it was Uplift. I can't remember the other one. There was 2 records for Rakim. Also produced for Beyonce.
Wow.
So
you got
the
like
Pink Panther soundtrack. I did the lead score to that. I did the Bamboozle, the Bamboozle's music. The Mau Mau's, which was a make believe group. I did Luther Vandross. I did the song called "How Do I Tell Her." I did Aretha Franklin. I did her single. It's called "Wonderful."
Is that the Grammy?
Yes,
award winning.
Right.
Yeah.
Mary J. Blige.
Wow.
These are records I don't really talk about much.
Well, because it just dawned on me, you did Beyonce, you did Jay, you produced Faith, you produced
Biggie. Exactly.
Like I don't. Has
Husband
any other producer done that before?
Connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That you
Yeah,
said
I
that.
don't know if that's ever happened. I mean, I'm probably.
Probably. Yeah, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Sweet Tea? You got some Sweet Tea?
Yes. Matter of fact,
one of the first hip hop sex symbols, mind you.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God, I mean, Sweet Tea was that chick, boy.
Yeah.
Still is.
She was making a comeback and reinventing herself, and she was signed to Jam Master Jay, working with Jimmy Henchman. Yeah, and she had changed her name to Sugar.
Oh wow.
Right. So one of the dudes that worked that went to school with these 2 twins, Carl and France, and they were I can't remember which one it was. It was Carl. One of them worked with Jimmy Henchman. He had the connection, and Jimmy was managing Sugar, Sweet Tea, and so that's how that song came about. Yeah. So that was definitely our me and D-Dot's first production credit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Can you say the song? You didn't say what song.
The name of the song is "What's Up Star." "What's Up Star" by Sugar. Yeah. And Jam Master Jay and we mixed the record together. So that was the first time actually working with Jam Master Jay. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
pretty
legendary.
cool. Yeah.
Once
And
again,
and that was the second single to the show soundtrack. Remember the show, How High?
Mm-hmm.
How High was the first single, and the show was the second single. Yeah.
Damn. Now I'm biased, but my favorite Amin Ra Lawrence production is the Aubrey album by Hakeem Green.
Yes, sir. We can't forget that.
That's my shit right here.
We can't forget that.
I think it tops it
Reckless,
all.
nigga, Reckless.
Reckless. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Hey, look out for that Aubrey album, by the way. Produced entirely by Amin Ra Lawrence. Old school.
New school.
Rules.
The podcast.